Hey everybody, welcome back to our second to last study in the book of Judges. We're in Judges chapter 20 today. Judges 20, there's a free PDF that you can download on our website, and there's a link down in the description. So let's talk about this. As we've mentioned in the last couple chapters, we don't have a judge who's featured in this chapter. We're going through a couple stories that will take us through the end of the book of Judges, but no judges appear here. So that takes us down to our next section, which is our timeline. When did these events happen historically? Well, the period of the judges spanned several hundred years, from approximately 1450 BC to 1000 BC. Most historians place it within that period. Now, the events of chapter 20, we don't know exactly when they happened within that period. However, we do know that these events directly follow the story that we read about in the last chapter in Judges 19. We need to zoom into our map a little bit to find out our exact locations. The chapter centers around the city of Gibeah, which was located in the tribe of Benjamin in the land that they inherited. The Israelites gathered their army at a place called Mizpah, which wasn't too far away. And we're also told that the Ark of the Covenant in these days was located at Bethel. Our main character we were introduced to in the last chapter, and that's this Levite man who had a concubine who was killed in the city of Gibeah in Judges 19. And then we're going to talk about the men of Gibeah. These were some immoral men who did terrible things to this Levite and his concubine. And then finally, the army of Israel, 400,000 men from Israel gathered in Mizpah to fight against the Gibeonites. As we move over to our outline, as you've probably already gathered, to really understand this story, you have to understand what happened in the last chapter. So if you haven't taken a look at that chapter, go back and read that one before you get into this, because now we're talking about the consequences and the follow-up to what happened in Judges 19. So verses 1 through 17, our first section we're going to look at it. Israel gathers to punish Gibeah. So when the word spread about what the evil men of Gibeah had done to the Levite and to his concubine, all the fighting men of Israel gathered in a place called Mizpah. And the Levite gave his account of the events about the rape of his concubine, how she had died, how the men of Gibeah had tried to do horrible things to the other people that were in the house with them. After hearing this, all the Israelites agreed, yes, the men of Gibeah need to be punished for what they did. The army of Israel marched against Gibeah, and 40,000 men of the army were charged with gathering provisions for the rest of the soldiers. The Israelites sent messengers to Gibeah, and they demanded that they give up the, quote, worthless fellows who had committed the evil act. But the Benjaminites refused. They wouldn't give them up. They were going to protect them. And so instead of giving them up, they prepared for battle against all the other tribes of Israel. Verses 18 through 48, Israel massacres the people of Benjamin. But the massacre didn't go quite as smoothly as the rest of the Israelites had hoped. So on the first day of fighting, the Benjaminites managed to win. They ended up killing 22,000 Israelites. So they came back a second day, and on the second day of fighting, the Benjaminites managed to squeak out a win again. They killed 18,000 men from Israel. And at the end of the second day, the whole army went to Bethel and wept before the Lord, and they inquired of the Lord whether or not they should go up and even continue this fight. God told them to fight a third day and that he would give them victory. On the third day of fighting, the Israelites came up with a new strategy. They set an ambush in hiding. And then the main part of the army went and fought with Benjamin like in the days before, and they faked a retreat as if they were being beaten again. This drew the Benjaminites out of their city in pursuit of this retreating army. Well then, when the Benjaminites were out of the city of Gibeah, the ambush came behind them, snuck into the city, and burned it. Right? And when the city had been conquered, then the soldiers who were in the city came out and fought outside of the walls. They surrounded the Benjaminites, and they were able to defeat them. That day, 25,100 men of Benjamin were killed, which Benjamin was one of the smallest tribes in all of Israel, so that was quite a substantial number. Now, the consequences of this massacre of Benjamin are going to be the topic of the next chapter, so hang tight for that. Chapter 21, our final chapter in the book of Judges. And now finally, our application. Don't get caught defending something wicked or something wrong just because a relative or a friend of yours gets involved in it. You know, it's tempting to justify someone's actions when we love that person, but right is right and wrong is wrong, no matter how much you love somebody. I've seen people flip-flop their doctrinal views just so they don't have to be in conflict with another loved one who believes something different. I've seen people try to justify immorality when it's their loved ones who get involved in it, and they had always previously condemned it. This application comes from the people of Benjamin. The people of Benjamin should have given up the, quote, worthless fellows who had committed the atrocities in the city of Gibeah, but they didn't. Instead, they chose to defend them, and because of that, the outcome was even worse. So, personally, the application for us is that we need to be able to recognize, to acknowledge, and to deal with sin, even when that sin hits close to home.